when it comes to how long a B2B website redesign takes, there's obviously no one answer. There's a huge number of variables that impact how long any project of that kind should take, could take, and will take. And there's a huge range of scales and scopes of project, which also obviously, naturally affect the duration of that project. And there's a huge range of approaches you can take and levels of polish that you can aim for and sophistication and complexity. So there's just masses of variables affecting how long B2B website redesigns take at the end of the day. But everybody wants to know when going into a project how long they should allow for it, how long they should therefore budget for it, and they want to know what it's going to take. So while I can't answer the question in any definitive way, there are nevertheless some rules of thumb that I think apply, and certainly apply over the many, many websites that we've designed, developed, and written here at Blend. This podcast is brought to you by Blend, the HubSpot website agency. Your website is your most valuable marketing asset, and so it's crucial that you get it right. We're the specialist HubSpot website agency, helping businesses create effective, scalable websites that drive real results. See examples of our work and the impact we've delivered for businesses just like yours at blendb2b.com. Some of the things that I think people should think about, therefore, are before you get into the production of the website, what are the pre-project steps that you need to do? And the one that I think deserves 4 to 6 weeks as a minimum is the strategy and branding exercise. The processes that can to some degree run in parallel, hence why I say only 4 to 6 weeks, although they are quite large endeavours. These are the processes of ensuring that you've got a sound strategy for the website that you're going to invest in building. And by strategy, I mean you know the structure, the information architecture, the content you want to present, the customer journey you want to facilitate, the keyword strategy behind that structure, the organization of all the information, which determines the size of the website, but more importantly, it determines how buyers find and travel through and convert on your website, because you think in advance about all of those factors. Doing that, taking that step, actually increases the likelihood that you'll see real ROI from that project. So while it might sound like an additional cost and an additional time, it's hugely beneficial. While that's happening, you can, of course, be looking at the suitability of your brand assets, your brand guidelines for application to the web. The reality is that while a lot of brand work is very, very high quality and in great shape, it often lacks thought about web application in terms of large-scale deployment across multiple pages, how to use iconography, how to use photography, how to use illustration, web accessibility, etc., etc. So there's normally work required on the brand no matter what, and it might go further. You might want to expand, explore, or elevate that brand prior to going into your website project. Now, I don't think 4 to 6 weeks is enough for all types of branding projects. A rebrand will take longer. But if you're just refining what you've got prior to investing in a website, then I would say you can get that in 4 to 6 weeks. Now you're at the point where you might be able to start your website project. How long will it take? Well, again, there's no one answer to that question, but the rule of thumb that I go by is that no good website project should be completed in less than 3 months, and no website project, regardless of size, should have to go beyond 6 months. Those are my rules of thumb. Now, there are scopes of project, particularly where there are massive population tasks on, thousands of pages, where you might go beyond that timescale. But in many cases, it's possible to cap it around that point, and I'll explain why. When you go about your website project, the first 3 months are necessary to build out all the foundational elements that are required to power the modular implementation on your CMS that gives you the website you need now and the editability you need in the future. You've got to therefore write copy to inform the creation of wireframes, page designs, and modules. And copy creation is a time-consuming task, as we all know. You've got to design the foundations of your website. You've got to design typography. You've got to design navigation, global styles, form fields, buttons, text, images, icons. You've got to design the assets that build up your website from the ground. And then you've got to combine those assets into key pages to define the modules that you require. This is all going to take weeks. And when you factor in the review process, it's going to take months. So by the end of a 3-month period of time, I'm usually confident that we can be in the position where we've got the foundations designed, we've got the key pages, we call them first of type here at Blend, we've got the key pages of the website designed, and they're being reviewed or they have been reviewed. Once that's complete, you can ship that information to development, who can then start working on coding the implementation of that, while you, as a copy and design team, start to work on the rest of the site. So for a small site, the pages that are required to build a 10 or a 20-page website can usually be written, designed, developed, and populated within that 3-month window. Maybe 4 if it's a slightly bigger website. Now, by the time you get to websites that are hundreds or thousands of pages, the timescale needed to complete those websites isn't typically linear. As in, it doesn't take 3 months to do the first 20 pages and the second 20 pages and the third 20 pages. When you get into hundreds of pages, there's usually far more reuse of layouts, far more reuse of presentation, far more migration than reimagining of either the copy or how it's presented, meaning those higher page counts become a lot more efficient to move over. In some cases, you can automate migration. In other cases, it's a population task that can be distributed and spread out across multiple team members efficiently and therefore completed more quickly. So my rule of thumb is that a good website project should take 3 months. A big website project is usually possible within 6 months, but allow yourself that extra month at the start to tackle the key matters of brand and strategy readiness. The things that most frequently impact timescales after commencing a project, positively or negatively, tend to be the same across projects. Classic ones are: 1, new stakeholders entering the process midway through. The problem for those stakeholders is they haven't been part of the conversation, the decision-making process, the consensus building up to the point at which they're asked to review something. It's fairly understandable that they're going to find challenge or something to say about the work they're presented with when they haven't had the benefit of being part of that journey up to that point. The problem is that their involvement usually only has one impact, and that's to elongate the process while you address their new point of view, their new perspective, their new involvement in the project, and it's usually a very real involvement. So to turn that into a positive, what you want to do is introduce all stakeholders at the beginning of the process so that they can enjoy the journey with you and they can make decisions at the right time. Another challenge that occurs that most often will affect negatively the timescale really comes from a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of how modern websites are built. And the simplest way to say this is that when changes to copy or design are requested during the development stage, the opportune moment is past. By the time you're in development, you need copy and design to be approved. You need copy and design to be fixed as much as possible. A developer doesn't have the skill set to go back and modify design or copy, fairly obvious. And yet it's common to see feedback relating to previous stages of the creation process at the stage after where it would have been helpful. So as much as possible, if you want to optimize your project timeline, minimize your time to launch, then you need to be really clear what you're reviewing and when, and get all feedback on it at that phase, because in the next phase, any changes to earlier steps will cost you double effectively, because it will require some undoing or duplication of work that's already been committed in that follow-on stage, while you address and implement changes in the earlier step. So you can really optimize your project timeline if you get your feedback in at the right phase of the project. The issue with copy is that copy doesn't benefit from any economies of scale. It's time consuming to create good copy, compelling, concise copy that communicates something complex with, an engaging style that's on brand, on tone, and effective. This is a real skill, and you need to give copy the time it requires and deserves. Now, website projects will often be divided between an agency delivering design and development and a client producing their own copy. Usually that's a product of cost, but it might also be rooted in understanding of the subject matter, the material, preference, resource in-house. The benefit of working with an agency on the copy aspect of your website is that they will have a team and processes that enable them to deliver it in a timely fashion that aligns with the rest of your project. Now, in the majority of cases, your website project timeline will have been based on those kind of best case, optimistic delivery dates, and a client's own ability to meet those is often quite challenging, quite hard, meaning they unfortunately, inadvertently impact their own project timescale by not being able to deliver copy at the same velocity. So there's a benefit to you partnering with your agency over copy creation, not only for reasons of quality and effectiveness, but also for the overall time and cost of your project and time to value, time to launch and time to when that website can start to drive pipeline for you. A word of advice for people who are considering website projects in the near future. If possible, don't set the end date before you've figured out what's required, how big it is, what's included, how complicated it is, who you're going to work with, and when the start date is. Too often, website projects come undone and corners get cut because a very tight deadline is set before the plan is even in place for how to deliver it. So that, word of warning, word of advice, try not to commission website projects when the deadline's already breathing down your neck and carved in stone. In those situations, consider other approaches to achieving your aims and goals. It's not uncommon for website projects to be tied to industry events, to be tied to business calendar dates, and other things that are not either A, directly connected or correlated to the purpose of the website, or B, important in a multi-year view during which your website will be live every day, helping buyers to decide to buy from you this year, next year, maybe 2 or 3 years from now. So making life unnecessarily hard for yourselves in terms of delivering the project that you aspire to deliver with a deadline now, when it's going to be live for that long period of time, is worth considering.